Welcome to Have Roots Will Travel. My name is Lisa Elvin Steltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. This past year, we've been traveling. We've been traveling through time and getting to know les filles du roi, the king's daughters, getting to know each and every one of them in a separate episode. There are about 700, and we're on episode 120, so we've got a long way to go. Before we proceed, I just want to make sure that I let you know about subscribing and to the channel. That would help me out so much. And we also have a Facebook group, or Facebook page, I should say. And don't forget, I also have haverootswilltravel.com. Have a look at that for previous episodes. I have the links all set up for all 119 of them. So you can have a look at what I've done prior. If there's any additional, please let me know. Would love to be able to put them on the list to be done. They'll all get done eventually, but it's just a question of when. So with that being said, let's get started, find out all about our fille du roi of this episode. She really is fascinating. So we have Marie Maja, which I believe is how we would pronounce it. It is a viewer request, and I looked in my files, and there is my best friend. That is also a fille du roi great-grandmother of hers. Let us have a look at what Marie and her story contribute to the story of Quebec. So she was born in 1637 in a town or commune called Touques in France. You can see on the bottom right of your screen that I've circled the region of France where she's from, which is Normandy. Inside of Normandy, the departments or counties, she is part of the Calvados department, and that is where her town of Touques is found. Her parents are Jean Maja and Marguerite Le Pellet. And Touques is situated on the river Touques, so it's like a riverfront, if you will. And it's about 3 kilometers of the ski resort of Deauville, if those of you who are familiar with France. The church where Marie was probably baptized is Saint-Pierre, which dates from the 10th century. It's got a lot of work. And then I put a picture of what Touques looks like currently, just to give you an idea if this is a place you want to visit. Let's get to know Marie and her journey to New France. So upon the death of both of her parents, she left for New France on La Nouvelle France ship. She arrived in Quebec on July 3rd, 1668. She carried with her a dowry worth about 300 pounds. So the groom that she selects is Antoine Roy de Desjardins. He was born about 1635 in a commune called Joigny, France. His parents were Olivier Roy and Catherine Bauderege. Now, the region that he's from is a region that we don't often see, actually. So I'm always fascinated when I get to do a new region. And it is a region called Bourgogne-Franche-Comté. So you can actually see it on the top right there. And so that's the region. The department or county is Yonne. It's found, the region is actually in Joigny is actually on the Yonne River. So it's on the banks. The current city dates from AD 369. They didn't build it yesterday. You know, it's really, really one of those historic places. This is the church where Antoine would have been baptized, which dates from about the 10th century. And then we have just kind of the fortifications. This is what it looks like today, the bridges and that sort of thing. So you can and at the very top, you can see the church right there. So it's really remarkable in terms of that history. You can imagine yourself almost in Roman times. So how did Antoine get to New France? So as so many before him, he was part of the Carignan Regiment. He was part of the Froment Company that arrived August 18th, 1665. So September 11th, 1668, they are married in Quebec City. So she arrives in July, and by September, they are married. He's done his time as a soldier, has gotten probably some land or some incentive to stay in New France. Where do they settle? So they settle at Batiscan. So the history of Batiscan begins with our old friend Champlain, who met up with a native named Batiscan in 1609, and by 1612 he had named this area Batisquam. In 1636, the seigneury was granted to Jacques Laferté, at which time it was called Madeleine. By 1639, it was divvied up again and given to the Jesuits. Hence, the area did not grow until 1666 when settlers began to arrive. Prior to 1670, the inhabitants met at the home of Lieutenant Nicolas Rivard de la Vigne. And I always like to talk about it because that's one of my great-grandfathers. A wooden chapel is constructed in about 1670, and by 1684, the parish of Saint-François-Xavier de Batiscan is formed. Now, this gives you an idea. The map up here that I have is an old map. It gives you an idea of all of the different scenery. I love this map because it kind of gives you, oh, okay, that's how it kind of got divvied up and divvied up. So we see that Batiscan is right next to Champlain's, for example. We see the current day Batiscan where it is on that map on the upper right. We see the church that eventually got built. And the beauty of that particular town is absolutely, it's a very small village. It remains that today. It's on my bucket list actually to go and visit that town because many of my people come from that area. So this is the 1681 census, and we have Antoine Roy Tonnelier, who's 45, and Marie Maja, sa femme, his wife, 41. So they're older, definitely. Pierre, their son, is 12. They have 2 goats and 5 enfants à valeur. Okay. Now the story is going to get a little bit interesting. Pierre would be their only child. He would go on to marry Marie-Anne Martin, with whom he would have 9 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. He then married Angélique Autet and had 6 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. He then married Marie-Louise Delogre and had 2 children, both of whom made it. In case you're counting, that's a whopping 17 children. So he made up for the fact that there were no other descendants from this particular line. So here's where the story gets really interesting, sad, complicated. Antoine was not a good businessman, and he ended up kind of, owing lots and lots of people, lots and lots of money. He would buy and sell and buy and sell, not normally at a profit. So his partial list of creditors included Jacques Marchand, Étienne Pézard de la Touche, who was the seigneur of Champlain. He owed the Jesuits money. He owed Monsieur Negnier, a man named Michel Lecourt, Nicolas Rivard. He owed my great-grandfather money. So my best friend's side of the family owed my grandparents money. It's a strange world, isn't it? Julien Tallier de Vendemont. So these were a very long list. So he had to figure out something. Oh, he did figure something out. He ended up trying to work out his debts. He moved from Batiscan and went to Montreal, was staying with someone, and unfortunately, on July 10th, 1684, the farmer, Jean Tallois de Vendemont, who you'll remember was the last person on that list, he found Antoine in bed with his wife, and he murdered him. So that's the end of Antoine. So Marie and her only son would return to Quebec City. They left Batiscan. They had, I can only imagine the scandal. Antoine was old enough and he supported his mother at the age of 14 until her death 5 years later. She was only 52 years old. Her legacy was that her son would continue the family line. As of 1729, there were only 24 descendants. This, however, would be enough for my viewer and my best friend to claim this fille de roi as their great-grandmother. So she is buried in Quebec City at the Hôtel Dieu Cemetery, and just, a very sad life to have left, France and have come to this, land and have a husband who obviously had issues, and then obviously left her bereft and alone. Very, very sad ending for our fille de roi. So here are some of the resources to further your studies. We have La Société des Filles du Roi that I often talk about. It's been around since 1994. And I'm a member, and I'm also the membership chairperson. Even before I joined, I was using that website. It's just phenomenal. Please, please have a look at it and see if that's something you'd be interested in joining. We have the Quebec Genealogical E-Society, another, kind of a new member of this Quebec societies. It's about 6 or 7 years old, and offers a great many resources. Again, have a look at what they offer. It is a paying website. Nos Origines and Généalogie Québec. I often talk about Généalogie Québec as being my ancestry. And then we have Migration and Facebook. Have a look at all of that and see, what kind of helps you out in terms of your research. So with that, we had a sad episode, 120. Marie was obviously someone who came to Canada at an older age, obviously, and had only the one child, but was saddled with a man. And I don't know the situation. I don't know if they only had one son because she couldn't, or she didn't want to. I don't know. But obviously, the end of her life, the early end of her life, and the fact that she had to subject her, she was constantly in a financial pickle, and then had to endure the scandal that was brought about, not because her husband was murdered, but because how he was murdered. It would be a scandal even to this day. Certainly in the 16th century, not a good thing. So she suffered, and when we talk about sacrifice, that's a sacrifice. And ultimately, her contribution to New France and Quebec was that her son, her one shining, testimony was there and continued her line. And because of that, we can thank Marie for her sacrifice and for her contribution, and we bless her memory. And when we talk about resting in peace, that's truly an example. That may she rest in peace. And with that, we end episode 120. I will see you on episode 121. Until then, au revoir.